Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlesworth. I work for Pure Insights, and the topic I'd like to cover in the next 20 minutes or so is making enterprise search work like Google. The reason I think this is relevant to this conference and knowledge management in general is that behind pretty well every knowledge management initiative or knowledge management application will be some kind of search platform, so that people can get their arms around the data and reuse it effectively. So search is incredibly important to this topic, and hopefully you'll find this session interesting. We have a Q&A session following it, so if anyone's got any questions, please jot them down and I'll do my best to answer them at the end of the session. So moving on, the agenda items I'd like to cover are, well, first of all, a little bit about us as a company, our background and experience in this area, Google today and the technology behind it. So, how does Google do what it does, basically? Because Google has set the benchmark, when it comes to search and the whole search experience. And this is generally what people are striving to achieve these days across their own sort of private content and within their own sort of search applications. And how do we bring this technology to the enterprise? So how would you go about recreating the Google experience, basically? And a client example just to finish things off so that you can see some of these concepts and ideas in action. So those are the areas I'm going to cover. Moving on to Pure Insights and us. So we're a relatively new company. We were founded just over 2 years ago, but our roots go back to the sort of early 90s, really. So we've been in the world of search over 25 years now, longer than Google have, in fact. We started off working for one of the big search engine companies, a product company. And then in 2005, we formed a boutique consulting company. And our objective really was to help companies make search work really well for them. We were technology independent, and we, over the following 15 years or so, we worked on thousands of projects with hundreds of companies around the world in pretty well every area of business and commerce. We grew to about 250 people. We were tiny, really, when it compared with the big consulting companies and IT systems integrators. But in the world of search, in our space, we were the biggest there was. There was no one as big as Search Technologies. That was the name of the company. And in 2017, we were acquired by Accenture, and we went on to effectively we became their center of excellence for search. And a lot of my friends and former colleagues are still there. It was a very successful acquisition in that respect. About 4 years later, we left. When I say we, this is the management team of Pure Insights. We left to form Pure Insights, and the reason for that was that we saw the world of search moving on, beyond just conventional search into this area of blending conventional search engines, search technology with AI. And this is what we really wanted to focus on, and that's what we do today. So we're about 30 people. We're quite small at the moment, but we're growing quickly. We have offices in the UK, US, and Costa Rica, and we're having a really good time, and it's a really exciting time to be involved in search and AI. So there's just and our mission statement is really simple, really. Make it work like Google. This is generally speaking what people want and what people have always wanted. Even if I go back to 20 years, the brief we were given was, look, I don't care what technology is behind the scenes, but make it work like Google, because this is what our staff are used to and they like, and our customers are used to and they like. And nothing's changed, really. 20 years on, people still say the same thing. It's getting harder, of course, because Google keep raising the bar. But this is what we enjoy. This is partly the challenge, really, trying to kind of understand how they do what they do, and then be able to sort of replicate that, inside a corporation. So that's how we spend our time. So let's just talk about Google, shall we? And what you see on the screen here would be a sort of typical search results page from Google today. Somebody has come on, they've asked the question, what is Tesla's revenue? And what you see here is a combination of things on the screen. Over on the right-hand side here is what we call an entity card. And this is just factual information about Tesla that Google has popped up that contains basic information, really, what Tesla do, some financial information in there, the stock price, net income, their sales, when they were founded, who the founders were, corporate headquarters, things like that. In the middle of the screen are what are called FAQs, frequently asked questions, and these are just suggested questions that Google have offered up, which are similar to what you've asked, but slightly different. And Google offer them up as alternative questions that you can pick from, and very, very helpful. They've been doing this for quite some time now. At the bottom of the screen are the classic search results pages that you've seen that have been around ever since Google launched back in '98. And these are basically documents that Google have relevance ranked. And the one at the top is generally the one you would pick first. Of course, you click on it, open the document up, and hopefully the document would contain the answer you're looking for. But what you're starting to see, and the change that really has come about over the last few years is, and if you look at the top of the screen here, it's demonstrated very well, is that it's popped up this number, 31.54 billion US dollars, and that's the answer to the question. And this is what we're starting to see over and over now with Google. And in actual fact, it's sort of morphed from a search platform to a Q&A, questions and answering platform, and it uses some really clever technology to do that, and I'll cover that off in the presentation. But yeah, this is the sort of classic Google experience now, and this is what people are asking us for when they come to talk to us about helping them with search. So just some other examples here of Google in action. This is applied to a topic that's perhaps more relevant to this event, knowledge management. And I've just, thrown in a few examples here. Who created the term knowledge management? What this has done is it's gone into the document index, and it's extracted a paragraph from a document. The document is called Knowledge Management FAQs, by the way, from this author here, capacity.com. And it's extracted the answer Peter Drucker here, who was the founder, recognized as the founder of knowledge management. So it's got that right. And a couple of other examples. Who was Peter Drucker? Google's done the same thing here. It's pulled out an information card on him as well. Okay. And it's also extracted again a paragraph from this document in this case, which is it's called a document called Peter Drucker, published by bl.uk/people, and what it's saying here is that Peter Drucker was one of the most widely known and influential thinkers on management. Okay, which is correct. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And then finally, I asked the question, when did Peter Drucker die? And it's just pulled out the date, 11th of November 2005. So those are some examples of kind of Google in action today, where it's providing answers and not just documents. Okay, so let's just look at the technology behind this. How does Google do what it does? Well, it's still a search platform. It uses a combination of search and AI. Okay, it's still a search engine. It always has been, and it probably always will be. So although the search engine itself has evolved incredibly over the last almost 20 years now, I suppose, since Google have been around, And their relevance ranking algorithms continue to improve, which they have to, because the volume of data that they're dealing with is just getting so big. But a couple of new things have appeared in the Google system. The first of all is they have incorporated a natural language processing system. They call it BERT, B-E-R-T, Google BERT. And this really works the way that a human does. In other words, it understands language, and it works across pretty well every language now, I think, as well. So that when you ask a question, it understands exactly what you're looking for and the context within which you're looking for it as well. And at the same time, when it's indexing content into the search index, it's doing exactly the same thing as well. So it's not just recording the keywords, but it's looking for concepts and topics. And then when you do a search, for example, how would you describe knowledge management? What it's able to do then is to understand the question and then map it onto the most relevant part in the most relevant documents in the Google index, extract that information and pop it up on the screen. And Google call this featured snippets, by the way. The term in the industry is extractive answers, but Google call it featured snippets, and it's incredibly powerful. And the really exciting thing, by the way, is the technology behind this. Google BERT has now been open sourced. That Google have kindly put it in the open source world, so we can use it. We can take it and we can use it if we want to, and if we know what to do with it. The other bit of technology that Google have added is what's called a knowledge graph. Okay, and this I think this appeared about 4 years ago now, and it's really a database of factual based information, and people, places, names, things like that. But the really clever thing is that everything is interlinked. So the relationships between all these things are linked together and recorded. That way, when I asked the question, how old is Peter Drucker? Then there would have been a node in here that said Peter Drucker. There would have been a node that had his age, and there would have been a relationship between the two that said how old, and that's how it's able to sort of extract that and just pop the answer up. So it's this is something that is a major breakthrough really in the world of search. And what you see here, this combination of search, NLP, and knowledge graphs is becoming almost the standard formula, if you like, for building a really effective search platform going forward. And just on the right hand side of the screen, you might find this of interest. I just popped up some facts and figures around Google today, just to give you a feel for the magnitude that these people are working with. They have about 30 trillion pages now in the Google index. Okay, that represents about 100 million gigabytes. The knowledge graph is got 148 billion nodes. Okay, it's quite incredible, really, how big this thing is, and it's running on about a million servers, rather, a million computers. So that's how it's able to, operate at the scale that it does, and at the performance that it does. It's really is quite incredible. So just moving on. Let's look at how we go about bringing this technology to the enterprise. What you see on the screen here is a classic blueprint, I suppose, for the design of a search application. It's very similar. It hasn't really changed a great deal over the last 20 years or so, other than the fact that there's some new components have come into this knowledge graph down here, and some AI technology here, and there's some AI technology here. And I'll just take you through each of the components so that you can understand, what role they play. So if we work from the left-hand side to the right-hand side, we have what we call data repository connectors on the right, and these connect into your information sources, which in the enterprise could be something like, I don't know, Microsoft SharePoint or Teams or Confluence or Salesforce, you name it, wherever your information is held. We then have a staging repository, which is basically a database that stores a copy of everything so that we can work on it locally. We have a content processing system in the middle here, and the role of this really is to make the data play nicely with the search engine, because if the data quality is poor, the search results will be poor. It really is as simple as that. It always has been, and it always will be, no matter how clever the relevance ranking algorithms are and the AI behind it. So the sort of things that we could be doing here would be cleansing the data, removing anything that we don't want to search, normalizing the data, making sure all of the date formats are exactly the same, enriching the data with lots of metadata. So, and to do this, we use NLP, of course. Google BERT would be one example of that. There's some really good cloud-based services now out there from the likes of Amazon and Google and Microsoft, and we can bring these in to help us do things like language processing, really advanced language processing, sentiment analysis, tagging images and video, and really anything. The world's your oyster now, and these services are continuing to get better and better and better, more accurate. So from here, the information's passed into the search engine and the knowledge graph. The search engine could be anything, by the way, any type of search engine. The most common ones now are probably the open source ones, Solr and Elasticsearch being the two primary ones. And then at the front end, you have the query layer, and the role of this, and again, this is using Google BERT generally, but the role of this is to intercept the query that comes in, understand it, and then direct it to the relevant part of the search engine or the knowledge graph, or both in a lot of cases. So that's a classic blueprint. Just to finish off, I'd just like to talk about one of our clients and show you some of this technology in action. This is the European Union Publishing Office, and they're based in Luxembourg. They effectively publish all of the content produced by the European Union, so they are one of the biggest publishers in Europe, if not the world. The data they're working with is huge and very varied. We have a lot of legal content over here, of course, public procurement data. They publish a directory of European institutions and all the key people involved. There's a lot of research data, miscellaneous EU publications and data, so a vast array of content. They followed, I'd say, a very similar path to lots of companies have. They started off, from a search perspective, that is, they started off with a proprietary search engine called Autonomy, which was one of the big giants back in the late 90s and early 2000s, a British company. And then they moved on to an open source search engine. They use Elasticsearch, and they then went and added some chatbot technology to that. And over the last year or so, they've been working with us to add this new Google, experience layer, which comprises Google BERT, the NLP system, and a knowledge graph as well. And just to show you a couple of examples. Question here is, what is the award value of the Tyler Brothers escalator parts contract? And this has come from the Tenders Electronic Daily, one of the services or the data sources they offer. And it's pulled out an answer here, 3.139 million euros. And finally, here's another question. Hopefully you can see this. What is the global annual profit for human trafficking? And the answer here is 29.4 billion. Okay, and this has been extracted using Google BERT from this document here, which is a study on the economic, social, and human costs of human trafficking within the European Union. So there's just a couple of examples of this technology in action today. So it's certainly not magic. It's the technology does exist. It can be used inside a corporation and inside of the firewall and across private content. I hope you found that interesting. Just one final point I'd like to make is that pretty well all the technology I've talked about here is now in the open source domain. So you don't need to have really deep pockets. To do something like this a few years ago or 5 years ago or whatever would have cost an awful lot of money. That really is no longer the case. You've just got to know how to use it, really, what you're doing, and if you don't have the expertise in house, then I'd urge you to bring somebody in who can help you do it or do it for you, and that's sort of what we do as a company, and we can provide this as a we can either help you build it or we can provide it as a service, even a service offering. Anyway, thanks again for your attention, and please stay online if you've got any questions. Thanks very much. Goodbye.